we are releasing a set of new features, and I wanted to kind of go through all of those new features. And it feels very good to basically be in the midst of all of you after such a long time. And thank you for all for coming over to this particular call. So the new features, what I'm going to do right now is to basically kind of walk through two new features and helping me in this demonstrating this feature. So we're going to do live demos of both these features, and the so these features basically will allow us to these features will allow us to kind of take this to the next level. So here is basically what we're going to do. We are basically going to talk about two things. One is basically the MSSP portal, and the second is basically the Office 365 piece. Now, the MSSP portal is basically something that any MSSP can basically use in order to essentially manage the networks for an MSP. And I know that quite a lot of you are MSSPs who are basically offering services to MSPs. And today, the way that it works is that it's a little bit clunky where you're using the role-based access to kind of control access to a specific company, etc. And then what happens is that the MSP does not get a full control of the entire set of features. And so, and then basically their own integrations and all of those pieces. And so this becomes very clunky in a way. And so this was something that a lot of MSSPs had requested us in terms of putting the features together. So what we are planning to do right now, what we're planning to do right now is that these MSSP, there's a new MSSP portal, and you can essentially manage all of your MSPs right from here. And what Barsha will demonstrate to you is the entire workflow of how basically you can bring an MSP in and how you can essentially manage them, etc. So I'll stop sharing my screen and I'll basically hand it off to Barsha, who can then basically kind of walk you through the portal.
Thank you, sir. I'll just quickly share my screen first. Is it visible?
Not yet.
Okay. Now?
Now it's visible, yeah.
Okay. Right. Okay. So this is the MSSP login screen. It's a single sign-on login. And as part of the first step, we need to enter the tenant name and then click on sign in. With that, all right. So this is the first view that you have before adding any of your MSP tenants. So as a first step, the MSSP user needs to add in MSP tenant, and that can be done by clicking on this Add MSP button here on the top left. So clicking on this will ask for the email ID of the MSP tenant and is the tenant name. Clicking on Save will send a confirmation message here and on the top right, and an entry in the MSP list will be populated here. But here is an approval process which needs to take place, wherein the notification will be sent to the MSP tenant saying that your MSSP user wants to add you and establish a relationship in Connect Secure portal. So please approve it. So a notification will be sent via an email, plus it will be as a notification pop-up in the UI. Till then, the MSSP will not be able to see any data related to the MSP. So I'll go to the MSP login now. This is the MSP login, and I'm logging in as an MSP user now to approve my MSSP's request. So just a moment, I'll try to minimize this. Yeah, so this is the MSP logged in. And here on the top right, you see a bell notification, which on clicking says that MSSP approval. There is a request to either approve or reject adding your tenant under the MS Managed Security Service Provider. So in the first step, I'll show what happens when we approve it. There's also an option to reject this request, but I'll start with the approve first. So on clicking approve, it will ask for a reason that are you sure you want to approve? Just enter a reason and click on yes. Once that is done, a confirmation message is sent here saying MSSP request approved. We'll go back to the MSSP login screen and I'll just do a refresh. Also, before I do a refresh, here is a status column, which is blank right now and it will show as pending. But once it has been approved by the MSP user, all the data populates and the status column becomes approved. So as you can see, the dashboard numbers are populating and the status here is approved. So this is how the MSP user can basically add all his MSP tenants and have a view either at a global level or again, if they want to view it at a particular, for a particular tenant, this is how the dashboard looks like. After the MSP user has approved the MSSP user, the MSSP with the view access can log in directly to the MSP login and view all the data there itself. So this is a seamless login where the MSSP need not go through any username or password authentication. It seamlessly takes into the MSP user. So that can be done by clicking on CCNS test, that's the tenant name here. So on clicking, so here is the MSP login wherein they can view all the data related to this particular MSP. Also, here is an option to remove the tenant. So for some reason, if you want to remove or the MSP tenant you are no longer having any relationship with the MSP tenant, there is an option to remove here. So clicking on remove will do that. And clicking on details here will give you the company level details for tenant level details of the MSP. So there are total 73 companies for this particular tenant. So it gives details of all of it here. And once you remove, there's a confirmation pop-up which says you want to remove this tenant. On clicking yes, it goes off. So that was all from the demo perspective. Any questions?
Okay, so thank you, Barsha. Thank you for that. So that's basically so that's basically as far as the MSSP portal is concerned. So what we'll do is let's continue on with the presentation. So what I wanted to do next is to kind of briefly take an interlude and basically kind of get into one of the pieces that I think is on top of the mind for a lot of people, which basically I saw in a lot of tickets, etc. So I thought instead of basically putting it to the end, let me basically kind of put that up front over here. Let me just very quickly share my screen again. Okay, so kind of after I think a lot of you basically spent a lot of sleepless nights in the whole thing that happened last week with CrowdStrike, etc. And then I think a lot of questions came up saying that we want to understand what is your QA process, what is all of those pieces, and and how we can basically go through this entire process. So what I wanted to do is to kind of walk you guys folks through with the process that we follow, what is the rationale that we do. And as I said, we are open to basically any comments or any suggestions that you may have. And I can also show you what are the improvements we are also trying to put into place so that essentially everybody feels comfortable about this. Okay. So the first thing is that like our development and QA process, basically, you know that the requirement gathering pretty much happens through the calls that we come to over here. Plus, basically, we also have your tickets and your feedback that comes back through tickets that essentially we collect, and basically we then document and basically put that together with a detailed specification. So as you know, we are very agile in terms of doing things, and then we have slowed down a little bit right now because of all these incidents occurring, etc., to put basically more focus on quality. But we do basically very comprehensive testing, unit integration and end-to-end testing to ensure quality and reliability to make sure that things work. And basically we have complete continuous integration and deployment pipeline. So basically we don't, when we deploy to endpoints, it's not done through manual processes, which might be error prone. So we have complete CI/CD automated processes. And you would appreciate the fact that since we have, like at this particular point of time, we have 14 different deployments across the world. And we basically push out releases almost on a daily basis. It's impossible for us people to do it on their own. So the process that's essentially followed is basically kind of a completely automated process. And we have a dedicated QA team that is basically conducting thorough testing, bug tracking, and quality assurance. But in addition to that, we also have a complete set of automated test cases that essentially are put together in order to essentially kind of make sure that these things are of good quality. Now, the first thing that I want to talk about is that we essentially kind of run what is called a sandbox test on all of the agents. So I basically we do this, and we also basically have done this analysis based on the tickets that are coming in. So one of the things that we basically take a lot of effort on is basically the agent, because the agent is something that sits on every single machine. So a problem with the agent can very quickly permeate and basically can become a disaster for everyone that is involved. So what we essentially have is a sandbox that basically is an isolated environment. We have 20 different operating systems installed on those sandboxes. It's nothing but a VMware cluster. And we basically try to simulate as many unique factors that you may encounter in the field. So we have a machine with almost like 300 different pieces of software installed. And essentially, we kind of uninstall and install software continuously on those machines to simulate what happens in the real world. So that sandbox is where we essentially kind of push all our agents to before we essentially deploy it. Now, we create all these kinds of traffic patterns, diverse scenarios, and all of those pieces that we are all used to. But that set will always be a limited set because we are limited in terms of what we can essentially produce in the lab. And then after that, what we do is we also have instrumentation in each of the agents. Now, this is something that a lot of you would have seen. So we basically have you have the ability, and you can see in the UI that you can pull logs from the agent. you can actually pull basically what is the difference data that has been sent from the device to the agent. Okay. And now we have added the ability for us to kind of run, like, for example, OS query queries from the UI on the portal itself. So that way you don't need to actually touch the agent and basically get data. So we add this kind of instrumentation so that we can essentially get data back and improve our processes, because at the back end we keep logging these errors, and then we are continuously fixing all of these errors that keep coming up. And then of course we go into validation and verification, and as and when we get feedback from all of these agents, plus basically anything that you folks report, etc. And one thing that I want to very clearly point out is that, like, if you take machines that basically are installed across different locations, etc., while we all talk of it as being, yeah, this is a Windows 10 machine or a Windows, the diverse set of software that basically is in there, and the diverse set of policies that basically people enforce in different environments is the challenge that we essentially face. So for example, basically Bitdefender likes us one day, does not like us the other day, and then we'll have to basically go back to them and get ourselves whitelisted. CrowdStrike likes us one day, it does not like a certain command that we run on this thing, and we have run that command based on a certain requirement. So a lot of times we basically have to essentially kind of take trade-offs into whether this is going to work with a particular EDR, not going to work with a particular EDR. And also basically when people ask for features, we validate them saying that whether we are running something which is going to be risky, and if it's going to be risky, then we basically kind of evaluate if there are better ways to do it than to essentially run things like PowerShell scripts, etc. And so this entire process is what we essentially do as part of this sandbox testing. So do mistakes happen? Absolutely, mistakes do happen. And for example, this is one of the missed incidents that we basically had recently, which is that for the agents alone, what would happen is that the build process would basically take place. But essentially the build, as you know, is downloaded from a S3 bucket. So we essentially push the data into an S3 bucket. And that process of pushing into an S3 bucket was basically done manually, because people would verify the agent and then push the agents in manually. Now, what happened in one of the cases is that in the case of the Raspberry Pis, the 64-bit image was copied to a 32-bit folder. So what happened is that when the 32-bit Raspberry Pis basically tried to download this image, they basically download the 64-bit image, and then basically they said no, and it did not function. And we basically got alerted to this, and we had to fix it. And now what we've done is that we've kind of put this entire copying of the final images into the destination folders as an automated process. And the only thing that is basically done is at the release time is that that one of the people basically goes and marks that particular the copied folder as a released folder. So we have removed the human element from all of this. So we try to basically continually improve the process so that the human element is removed in all of these. And that is what we're doing all of the time. The next thing is that we are also basically doing complete automated testing. So we have automated testing for all the functions, major functions that are there. So we get a daily report, and basically we have an hourly report of all the functions that are working, not working. This was something that did not exist 3 months ago. In the last 3 months, Vidya and team have basically come on board along with a set of folks, and they have essentially kind of made a complete automation suite. So we get daily reports on basically what services are working, what services are not working. And if it's not working, then basically there are auto healing procedures that have already been put in place. And we also get daily reporting from pod saying that how many failures occurred and what are those failures. And any failures that occur is again logged into a Slack channel. And so we essentially are watching the Slack channel to see what basically is going wrong. So now basically there is always the trade-off, right? So one is basically you can make sure that your software is perfect, and at one point of time you will basically say that this is the perfect piece of software, it can go out. And second is basically there is a time value that is there, which is like everybody wants, like whenever anybody requests for something, it is always like I want it yesterday or I want it in the next 2 hours, right? So we need it instantly. So how do we balance these out? So for example, when we look at agents, what we do is that we don't optimize on time. We probably do a 20% optimization on time, but we focus on 80% perfection, because as I said, it's a very key piece of the puzzle. And so we basically have 80% optimization in terms of making it perfect and not have a effect in the whole system. Now, when you take features on the portal, so for example, things which are there in the UI, showing up this thing, certain text images, or basically certain optimizations, etc., then we focus on basically getting these features out as quickly as possible, and basically we don't focus too much on perfection side on this. Now, this is something that we probably will change going forward, where we'll basically increase the focus on perfection in this particular area too, because I think we have all the features in there, and the velocity might not be required as much as basically kind of getting the features basically working perfectly. So this is identified as an area of improvement for us, and we are essentially going to take this and then move this forward. So this is basically based on the analysis of whatever tickets we've done, what is the return rate of the tickets, all of that essentially we put together. And based on that, this is the analysis that we came up with. And so this is the area of improvement that we're going to take. And this improvement area is going to be driven by Vidya to basically kind of make sure that this becomes equivalent to the agent, where we focus more on perfection with the 80% and 20% basically on time optimization. Okay. So we basically have a process we will basically review the process. And in fact, what we are going to be doing going forward is that we are going to basically form a core team of people who can basically come in from the MSSP and MSSP community, who can come in, and we will essentially let them into all of the processes that we do so that they can audit it and basically feel comfortable about it. Of course, I cannot basically let in everyone into this group, but we'll take a select few folks who basically are kind of the leaders in this area, and we'll basically bring them in. And of course, we are basically going to put this automated test coverage. We will basically share knowledge through the various sessions. So we'll continuously talk to you about how we are basically changing any process and making sure that releases are basically with quality, and how is it going to go. And basically with defect resolution time, we basically want to keep bringing down the defect resolution time. So we basically are continuously working towards basically reducing the defect resolution time. Okay. So the other thing that we are doing is that reorganizing the teams. So basically earlier we had basically a very broad set of people who would basically work across the teams. And now what we are doing is that, so this is also to reduce basically the whole concept of attack surface, right? So essentially we're going to have separate teams, which we already have, and we have isolated these teams. One team working dedicated on the agent, one team which is working on vulnerabilities and the database, etc. The third team that's working on database and API, and a fourth front-end team. So we have kind of split this and basically made these as, so in the language of what the architecture that we have, these are different pods that are working as separate pods themselves. So that essentially, again, this is to basically minimize the attack surface and make sure that people basically are experts in that particular area, and make sure that nothing basically kind of goes out of that area unchecked. And that's basically one of the things that we are doing with the whole dedicated team model that we have put together now. So as I said, the way that we will assure quality for you is basically testing, comprehensive testing, automated processes. And then we basically, of course, see, the point is that we are in a continuous auditing mechanism. So we have a tool which is called Sprinto that basically audits all of our repositories, all of our outputs, everything on a daily basis. So we continuously basically track our progress on a SOC 2 compliance or ISO 27002, all of these on a regular basis using this portal. And so we basically stay continuously in compliance. So we are not somebody who basically says, this is, we're done auditing, so now we can do whatever we want. No, we don't. We basically continuously keep our processes up to date. And we have a tool that monitors it, so that tomorrow, even if there is an incident, it basically becomes something where we can demonstrate that we have done everything which is there in our control to essentially make sure that nothing wrong has happened. And as I said, we have a complete dedicated QA team that is basically looking into each of these aspects. And of course, we basically will take feedback from all of you and basically take care of continuous improvement. So this is something that I wanted to kind of very quickly share because I know that a lot of this is kind of on top of the mind, especially after last week's incident. And so I just wanted to quickly share this. Now, let's go back to something which is more exciting, which is, uh, let me, okay. So let's go to the next, so let me just share my screen again. Okay, so folks, now basically I introduced the whole MSSP portal. So the question is that now the immediate question that people are going to ask me is that, is it something that MSSP has to pay? How does this work? All of this stuff. So the concept is these are the key tenets, okay? The MSSP will not be paying for the use of the platform. The MSP can basically define if an MSP is going to be on platform or off platform. And I'll explain to you what is off platform or on platform. So on platform means that you will, the MSSP can define what are going to be his charges for basically providing the MSSP service, okay? If you basically keep it on platform, then Connect Secure will collect this amount and will deposit it back to the MSSP, okay? And we'll be applying an admin charge of $29 because that's what we have to pay our CPA company to basically process this transaction. And basically, there is a consent-based approval, and then the MSP can offboard at will. So essentially, this is how this whole thing is going to work. So the MSSP portal is more of a portal where MSPs basically will continue to own their entire set of customers and everything. The MSSP can come in, he can basically provide guidance, he can perform all the actions on behalf of the MSSP. So it becomes almost like a white labeled version for the MSP where he's using the expertise of the MSSP, okay? So this is how it's going to work. So please let us know your feedback on this. If anything else basically you need from this, we're absolutely happy to take care of this. Okay, the next thing that basically now come back to the MSP world, let's talk about Office 365 security. So we basically built a whole bunch of tools which basically go out. Now, this is not something new. A lot of products today are there, which basically I think SaaS alerts, there are a whole bunch of tools that are basically out there which do this work, which is basically looking at the entire Office 365 and audit it all out. Now, the concept that we had was that, okay, if I can give you all of this in this particular tool, and maybe we have to just create a little bit of, we'll add a little bit of pricing on this because we're going to be incurring certain cloud cost for this. So if we basically add just a minor uptick in the price, additional module, then we will be able to kind of offer this entire module to you. And so in order to show you this module, I have my friend Swami, who basically will share his screen and basically show you all of the features out there. So Swami, you can take it away. Okay, so what Swami is basically demonstrating, I think his audio is this thing. So what Swami is demonstrating is basically a report. So basically, once you essentially add it, you basically configure a tenant, and this is something that you don't need to worry about. It basically is just additional permissions on the existing Office 365 integration that you have. So what it does is it basically kind of goes out and then basically gets all the information about all of your all of the things that are, it audits your entire Office 365 infrastructure. So what are the things it's basically trying to do? It's basically saying that things like applications are registered. So what are the, for example, here is one thing, which is what are the default permissions? What are there are dangerous default permissions that are there. And then it also gives you what is the remediation for this entire thing, right? And then it gives you all of the links of where you can essentially kind of find details about this whole thing, right? So all of these are basically kind of like, for example, Exchange mailboxes with POP enabled. So Swami, if you can go down, we can basically look at other things like OneDrive, etc. Then there are no conditional access policies. As you can see, it can basically look at your entire SharePoint and essentially talk about things like legacy authentication enabled, okay? And then if there are Exchange mailboxes with send as delegates which are found. So all of these are basically findings that it does. It does basically domains with no DMARC records, and then basically looks at your for example, here, it looks at your Microsoft Teams policy. It looks at your basically PowerShell module being enabled on your tenant. So all of these basically are rules that essentially have been written, and it basically completely brings back all of the auditing trail for all of this. And this basically is what we are doing is that we are also mapping all of these audits into the CIS audit summaries. So you will actually get a CIS report also for this. So Swami, if you can basically just download. So right there, you can essentially download a document which has the complete report. So can you open the document reports for me if you can? Yep. So basically, this is the Office 365 inspection report. Can you go down for me? So all of the finding summary down here, please go down. Correct. So please go down. Yep. And then basically complete details of each finding. So it also talks about how it basically found this. What are the values that were returned by the test? Okay. What is the remediation? So it basically gives you a complete comprehensive report of every single finding and what basically is what are the remediations? What are the risks that are associated with this? All of the thing is basically kind of put in out here. Okay. And the next thing is that, like, Swami, do you have, is the PowerPoint report downloading? Yep. So you basically kind of get a PowerPoint report, an Office 365 security report, which talks about a summary about how many risks are there and what are the top 5 categories and all of those pieces in terms of basically Exchange, SharePoint, Azure AD, all of those pieces. So this PowerPoint report basically will be enhanced far more than what it is right now, but basically this is essentially just an initial report that we drawn out, but essentially there's a more comprehensive PowerPoint report which is coming as part of the company assessment, which basically where this will be included into. So this is essentially as far as the Office 365 audit is concerned. The second part, which we are working on right now, which basically will be approximately 4 weeks from the date that we release this Office 365 module, is a complete remediation suite for this entire, all these items. So while we give you a text right now, you can essentially kind of, if you enable the read-write access, which is basically on that tenant, then we will be able to go and fix those policies. Okay. The reason that we basically kind of are waiting on a couple of weeks for all of you, because we want everybody to be comfortable that the findings are fine and everything is good. And then we will essentially give you the ability to remediate it, because then what happens is that you can go in and remediate it, and then it is automatically changed and you can basically finish the remediation thing. Third, we are also basically going to be able to generate what is called a remediation script. And this remediation script will essentially kind of come up and you can basically use your RMM to basically run this remediation script, or you can run it from anywhere else. Now, the next page, the place where we are going to integrate this whole thing is that all of these findings, basically, whenever it runs, it generates a report. The next time it runs, basically, it will generate another report, right? So it's not just going to be a pure reporting feature. It's been included into this entire product as something that can be, you can use it for notifications to open tickets, to automatically close tickets when things are closed. All of that essentially is basically being integrated in the system. So which means that the entire life cycle. So the point is that, like, I think a lot of you were basically asking us as to why this is not yet released. The answer to this is this. That is, like, if I was to just show you the screen and be done with it, then that's the easiest thing for me to do. But the point is that I have to integrate this back into the entire scheme of things, which is I have to be able to notify, I have to be able to create a ticket, I have to be able to close a ticket when all of those observations are found. And I'm pretty sure that you folks will ask me to basically say that I want to suppress this finding and then suppress this finding for so much time. So I have to provide the ability for you to suppress. So when I take all of these features and put it together, that's when it's going to be comprehensive. And that is exactly how this is essentially going to be. And that's basically the second part of this whole thing. So that's the Office 365 audit report. So thanks, Swami, for doing this. So that's that's the second thing that we essentially were talking about. Now let me basically go back to the third thing once. Just share my screen. So what are the other things that we are essentially doing? So in the light of recent efforts, we basically first are basically going to be looking to reduce the attack surface that we are introducing into the system, right? So this thing, one of the efforts that we are putting together in this particular space is one, we are integrating, we are writing a bunch of scripts that can be integrated into your existing RMMs so that they can collect the data instead of basically us deploying agents to your machines. So that way, what happens is that you have one less agent to talk about, and you can use your existing RMM to essentially kind of get the data from the entire network. If that basically, we also basically will be providing you the ability to essentially kind of just install a tiny VPN agent and then basically push data over the VPN, if that basically is useful. We also basically are working on giving you a virtual machine or a bootable USB stick, and this is something that a virtual machine is something that Tenable and Qualys and other folks do. So one of the reasons we are doing this is because we are noticing that a number of people are installing the probe on a machine which is basically an Active Directory controller. So the point is that when this runs, as we basically enhance the scope of this and we run more and more data, specifically basically when we try to pull Active Directory information and when we try to pull Active Directory events, what happens is that suddenly the CPU spikes on that machine. And with the CPU spikes on the machine, what happens is everybody basically kind of becomes very upset that basically that machine is being overloaded, and that's the Active Directory machine. So one of the things that we're trying to do is to essentially kind of remove this out from there and make sure that this runs on its own dedicated machine in case your machine is not. And this you can basically like push it onto an Intel NUC or a Raspberry Pi or any other machine and basically run it from there. So these all will be available in the coming 6 weeks. That's basically what we've been working on. Second is that our data analysis team is basically working on coming up with a brand new set of reports, which basically talk about, see, we looked at all of the reports. We took, so the team actually did a lot of work, right? So thanks to a lot of you who basically sent us reports from Qualys, from other products, etc., saying that this is the kind of report my customer likes, etc. And what we kind of, after doing a complete analysis, what we basically found was there are two parts to the reports, right? One is basically, do we have the information? In each of the cases, we found that we have all the information. But what we suck at is basically how it is presented. And that basically requires a very good dress up. Second is that it also requires more comprehensive data analysis so that it is something that can be very easily consumed by people and they feel basically happy receiving that particular report. So we have come up with a set of reports, and as I said, you will see a preview of these reports on August 1st. And one of the things that we've used for this entire thing is that we built a complete data model in AI using the Llama 3 engine. And we basically used that to essentially come up with interesting insights, which essentially are going to be part of the report. So it's basically going to be a lot of AI-driven reports that we are essentially going to be generating going forward. And those are the templates that we are essentially using. So I want to thank a lot of you who basically have given us feedback in terms of a lot of feedback in terms of how the report should look, what should happen, etc. And Simon, Dennis, a lot of you have actually given us a lot of feedback and data. And I think folks from Meriplex also gave us a lot of information. So we're basically consolidating all of that. Plus, basically, we are using AI to basically look at this data in a different manner and put this together. So I'll present the first preview of it starting next week. And then we can essentially jointly kind of get this into a shape where we are all happy with where it is. Folks, I know a lot of you basically have asked me about stocks, etc. And the reason that I'm mentioning it over here is because we are working on basically getting you the stocks as per the partner stock plan, and we are not here to basically run away or shy away from our commitments. There are two things, like the way that the partner stock, the stock plans work, they basically have non-compete clauses in them, and then there are no encashment strategies that are basically put in place. And we are working with the folks to essentially put these two together so that it basically becomes a win-win situation for you. So there is no point in me giving you some stock, and then after that, if you are not able to do either of these two, then it becomes irrelevant in the whole scope of things. And so I'm working through that. Just give me like I would say basically give me 2 to 3 weeks to complete this process. I know that it's already been like 3 to 4 months, but I'm dealing with lawyers over here. So basically time is something that I cannot basically drive in this particular case. You ask me for product or development, I can drive it, but with lawyers, I will not be able to drive the timelines. They drive the timelines. Okay. So apart from this, there are a bunch of minor updates. So basically there is the whole concept of favorites. So you can essentially kind of add different screens as favorites and then basically access them very quickly. So I think a lot of people got excited by this feature. And then we have global audit logs in the global settings. Okay. And then we have, you can basically, you have vulnerability titles and severities under network scan findings at a global level. So apart from that, there are a whole bunch of updates in terms of the ability to suppress registry vulnerabilities. And then, so that's basically kind of the piece over there. So with this, I think I've completed my update for this week. As again, thank you all for your support during this period. We've basically kind of, it's helped us kind of come up with a lot of things that are there. So what I'll do is that I'll just quickly run through the questions over here. Okay, audio fixed. Okay, start. No. Tim, I was just happy to say I'm not the only one with 60-second authentication speeds. We will be, this will get fixed in exactly 3 weeks from now, because we've reported this to Citadel. Citadel has been working on it, and basically they have given us a timeline of 3 weeks. And this is primarily because of the this salt that they're using basically takes this much to basically kind of convert the password that we send into a salt key. And that's where basically this problem is occurring. So we're going to be getting a fix for this in 3 weeks. So is a separate URL. When will it be available for texting? In a week's time. Okay. Is OS patching functional? Should the results of those actions be visible under patch jobs tab? Yes, Chris, it is fully functional, and it should be visible under the patch jobs. Will the portal be available? So I think most of these questions were answered. So Mark, when will the Office 365 security inspection report be in your portals? It's expected to be there by August 15th. Bill, I think I answered your question. Dennis, I think this also was answered. So yes, there will be notification for events. It's on the dark web scanning. That's basically the next module that we are basically going to be developing after the Office 365 release. Yes, the answer is yes. We're going to basically be putting in dark web scanning. David, will there be a way to generate differential report changes between prior report and the one different date? So the changes are highlighted. Yes, David, that essentially is going to be not just for this report, but for all reports. It's a common feature that's going to come in. Enrique, PI search, yes, we are basically going to be adding PI search for OneDrive, SharePoint, all of those repositories also. And basically the ability to add your own custom regexes is basically being added into the PI search. That basically will be a part of the agent release that will essentially probably hit you anywhere between August 15th to August 30th. Okay, I think the PCI question has been answered by Krishna. Would it be possible to have clickable menu breadcrumbs while navigating various screens? Simon, we'll take this into advisement and basically work on this. The scheduled reports are working. Dino, if there is a problem, please, Vrishali, please reach out to Dino and see what is the issue over there.
Sure, sir.
Did you say that Office 365 is coming as part of the current subscription of cost extra? I know you mentioned something. So David, the idea is that basically it will be, we are looking at it being like priced as an add-on module, but it will be a very reasonable price. It's not going to be something that's basically going to break this thing. Just because we have certain costs that we incur, so we have to basically kind of balance those costs out. So the answer, Tyler, in terms of penetration testing, the point is that we perform PT every month, which is basically an automated PT. Now, a certified PT, which basically is required for compliance, is basically performed once in 6 months. But our automated PT basically runs every month. But I would like to do it almost like every 2 days or 3 days now with the rate at which basically things are happening. But I think basically we also basically have limits in terms of how much we can essentially kind of push the infrastructure to it. So I will keep you updated in terms of how quickly we can, how we can make this process more automated and how we can essentially quickly kind of get your reports. And second thing is that from a PT testing perspective, what we would like to do going forward is that we would like to basically, ideally, what I would like to do is that I would like to basically do it bi-weekly and publish bi-weekly reports so that everyone has access to it. We want to keep complete transparency on the platform and basically not make sure that you are comfortable in using this particular platform. Okay, so I think I covered all the questions. If I have not, basically, please pardon me, but we can this thing. So with that, I think that's basically we need 3 new messages. Okay, so thank you very much, and basically I hope to see you next week. Next week will be exciting. Get any folks that want to see improvements on reports, please basically ask them to come over. Let's basically look at these reports and jointly make it like really good. Thank you all.